Everybody, and this is a perfect day on Black Island for this because it's a little chilly out there. And fortunately, in my life, we still have a little snow and on the ground. So I like winter to have winter features like snow and ice and cold weather. Um, Plenty of time when it's not. So I'm glad to have it while it's here. So seals, like it's called, and we'll be talking a lot about different types of seals on Black Island. And so with that, I'll just get started and see where we go from there. So we have 4 different seal types, species that we can see on Black Island. We have gray seals, harbor seals, harp seals, and very rarely hooded seals. And so we can see those, and I'll be talking a lot about each one of those. So inquiring minds want to know, why are they here? What are they doing here? How do they get here? Are they hurt? Are they healthy, etc.? Why are they piled up and balancing on rocks like a circus animal, etc.? So I'm going to try to answer all these questions as we go through talking about the individual species, but I might miss something. So try to keep any questions you might have in mind, and we'll get to them at the end. And with that, these are just seals abound on Black Island. So harbor seals, these are hauled out to rest, and that's one of the main reasons that seals in general are seen usually at low tide. They use the low tide to haul out and rest and get warm and just sort of rest up for the day. And they do this at least once a day. And since we have 2 low tides, they may haul out even more frequently. And you'll especially see, these are not young, but you'll especially see young seals hauled out more frequently for longer periods, usually on the beach, because it's hard to clamber up on these slippery rocks. And that's just because they're resting. It's perfectly natural. And because Black Island has so many rocks and outcroppings, we often see them on the rocks, not so much on the sandy beaches. These are harbor seals, and just to go back quickly, these are all harbor seals on the rocks below the Parish Center on Spring Street. And here's another couple of views. Now, telling the difference between the different seal species can be a little tricky on Black Island. The 2 that we have the most frequently are harbor seals and gray seals. And there's some distinctions. Gray seals, and you'll see this a little in a few moments, but are much bigger, although you need sort of to have the other ones next to them sometimes to tell rough size. So a harbor seal that we're looking at, their adults are about 5.5 to 6.5 feet long, and they are the smallest of the 4 species. They have a face that's very endearing, sort of puppy-like. And once you start looking at some of the forms, and try not to get too bogged down on the colors and patterns, which can range a lot depending on if they're wet or dry, how old they are. Harbor seals can be silver. And I'm using a little reference guide here, which I'll talk about later, but their color is variable. It's silver to reddish tan to nearly black, often blue-black on the back with light and dark speckling. And the underbelly is almost always lighter than the upper part. So those are harbor seals. So that pretty much covers the whole gamut between white and black. But what you're looking for when you're looking at color and patterning is sort of the model patterning that you see here. But if you look at the face, you can see a couple of things that distinguish it from a gray seal. One is that its snout, its face is kind of concave. There's a little dip, and it makes it look like a little dog or puppy. And you'll also notice that, if you can see this closely, that their eye is about halfway between its ear, which is right here, and its nose. And that is different, you'll see shortly, in a gray seal. So the harbor seal is smaller. They have a puppy-like face. Their nose is concave, and their eye is halfway between the snout and ear, roughly. Harbor seals are the marine mammal of the state of Rhode Island. So they're probably the only seal that we would consider to be a winter resident of Block Island consistently. Now that may be changing for some species, but this is a species that you can, if you go out in the winter and look at the haul out spots around Narragansett Bay and Block Island, you're very likely to see a harbor seal. Let's see, here's some more harbor seal photos, just snoozing in the sun on a rock and water that's about 40 degrees, just kind of taking it all in. A couple of other things, again, on this one over here, you can see its eye about halfway between its nose and its ear, right here. Their ears are not external. They don't have ear flaps like we do. So they're internal ears, and so you're looking for a little hole, which you're seeing right there. One of the other things about it is if you look straight, if you happen to be lucky enough to look straight on at a harbor seal, you're going to notice that its nostrils come together like a little V, and that again can help you if you're trying to figure out if it's a harbor seal or if it's a gray seal. Let's see, the population in Rhode Island is stable, is considered stable. And in general, the population of seals in New England has been going up steadily since 1972, which is when the Marine Mammal Protection Act went into existence, and it became no longer legal to kill them. Many places had bounties on seals because they thought they were stealing the fish that fishermen wanted, or they wanted them for food, or you know, furs, things like that. But now it's illegal to mess with any marine mammal due to the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And since then, the seal populations have been coming back. They estimate about 800 seals in general in the wintertime population in Narragansett Bay. And they really haven't paid too much attention to Block Island, but we regularly have at least 50 to 500 in any winter time. Now, some seasons and years are different than others, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. If not now, I think I've covered the basics of harbor seals, but we can always come back. Now, this is a colony of our, it's not an actual colony, it's a big haul out of gray seals. Now, gray seals turned up in big numbers in 2017, I think it was. This photo was taken last year in 2020, a year ago. This, if anybody can't quite place themselves, we're looking north at the tip of the island at Sandy Point, and there are a lot of harbors of gray seals out there, and it's a haul out area. Here's a little bit closer look at them. You can see that when I counted on this particular day, and it was very hard to count, I stopped at 250, and that's roughly about how many there were. I'm sure there are others tucked in and around that I actually couldn't see. Let's see, I'm gonna go, no, I'll save that. So this is a gray seal. This one is not at that big haul out. This is also behind the Parish Center, and you can start to see that its face, its eye is very close to its ears. It's halfway for a harbor seal would be about here, but the eye is much closer to the ear than it is to the nose. And its nostrils tend to look like a W, not a V. This is also a very large animal. Where the harbor seal can be 5.5 to 6.5 feet, this is 6.5 to almost 8 feet at its largest. Um, but again, this one, you can almost see the texture of its fur. It's pretty dried out, which it wants to be. It's warming up and resting on this big rock. And they say, unlike the harbor seal, which looks like a dog or a puppy, gray seals are sometimes known as the horsehead seal, because their face is very long, it's very broad, and it looks more like a horse hanging out. And again, here's a close up again, the eye much closer to the ear than it is to the nostril, to the nose. And again, the nostril is sort of a W looking. But you don't usually get a good chance to look at the nostrils that much. You're better off looking to see the shape of the head, this overall size of this animal. Now, this is a baby gray seal. Its patterning is pretty much like the adult. Some seals you're probably familiar with are white when they're birthed, but not gray seals. They come out with roughly the pattern that they're going to have, this sort of mottled dark on white. But again, ear, let's see, where's the ear is here, the eye is here, and the nose is way down here. So it's a little hard to see. It gets really tricky getting a sense of its bristles there. Gray seals, the harbor seals are, I want to go back a second. Harbor seals are coming down from the Canadian Maritimes, and they spend most of their time in the near coastal waters, hauled out on beaches and rocky coastlines in Maine and Rhode Island, down into Long Island Sound, maybe reaching off of New Jersey is their normal winter range. And then in the summertime, they move back north for their, well, in the late spring, April, May, they'll start leaving these waters and they'll go further north, maybe, as I say, Eastern Canadian waters, and they'll pup and then they'll breed and then they'll spend the summer foraging. Gray seals have a very similar, they also like to hang out on the near coastal waters, hang out on rocks and outcroppings, but they tend to like rougher water, and especially areas where there's a tide, riptide, like at the north end. It's typical gray seal habitat. And they do a similar thing, but the gray seals are pupping between December and February, whereas the harbor seals tend to pup between March and April. So any babies that you're seeing now are most likely, but there's always exceptions, but most likely they are the gray seals because of the time of year. Although harbor seals will start pupping very soon. Here's another one, adorable, aren't they? This is again another gray seal. This particular animal is at the north end, Sandy Point, and just to give a sense, that's a car truck track, right? So you get a sense of how small this one is. This is a very new pup, and it looks very like, who are you, and are you going to let me feed? But if you get a good look at its profile, you see that typical gray seal look. Here's its ear right here. Here's its eye very close down to its nose, and its snout is more or less straight. It doesn't have that nice little dip of a harbor seal, but beautiful. And you have to be careful when you're walking out. You can actually, I was pretty closer than I should have been when I saw this. I just wasn't paying attention, and whoop, all of a sudden there he was, sort of sleeping in the track, and he kind of moved up to this position. So you should not, you're not allowed to harass in any way marine mammals, including seals. That includes chasing them back to the water or approaching. You should not go closer than 150 feet. Obviously, all these pictures are taken with a long lens. I was much farther away, except for this one, which startled me, than 150 feet. So again, here we are back at our haul out, our major haul out, and I just put this in to show the great, almost all of these are gray seals. And it just in this up close image, there's, I think I counted it, something like 50 seals. As I say, most of them are gray seals, and they're different colors. Here's model. Some look very brown, some look very dark, some look white, and then another even more close-up look. And there are many poses. I put this in here because up sticking is the classic look of the gray seal, that horse head look. Again, its ear, its eye, and the long stretch to its nose. In this one, you can even see its whiskers, its bristles. They often look like they have a very thick neck with a lot of rings, double chins, if you will. And so they have a very different look, and they can be immense. Look at this guy. He is out for the count, and he's one of the longest in this group. There's a very long male, and then it's snouted. I mean, he's just talk about a face plant, right? And this looks aggressive. That's a yawn. That seal is yawning, but look at the size of that mouth, and they have big teeth. So they are actually can be quite dangerous. Another good reason, other than the law, for you to stay well away from them. And although they're not as graceful on land, they can move faster than you might think. So stay well away. Not only might you get injured, they might get injured from you. We have diseases and viruses and things like that that they don't, and vice versa. And there are many they call zoonotic diseases that can be spread through marine mammals, especially seals. There's quite a bit documented on that. So you do not want to get bitten for a number of reasons. So then one of the other species that we get much less frequently is the harp seal. The harp seal is interesting. Well, it's completely different look. This is an adult, black and white, and they're pretty much white with this black face. Now, it takes a minute to get your orientation. This guy is on his side. So here are its eyes and its mouth, nose, whiskers, looking at him straight on. I wanted to get a picture of this V. It's sort of like a V, or goes down on both sides, and that's the adult. And then the young is sort of more closely looking to a harbor, but the pattern is completely different, white with black blotches. Again, these are not very common, but they do every once in a while. The large adult there, I took that photo on the same walk as I took that big group of gray seals last March. And then this photo of the baby is not mine. It was taken by Dr. Kenny, who's a marine animal specialist, retired from the University of Rhode Island. And he took, as a caption says, it was found this at the URI Bay campus on Narragansett Bay in 2008. And then it was collected by the Mystic Aquarium staff. So Mystic Aquarium is our animal rescue for marine animals. Their area covers Massachusetts, parts of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, Connecticut, and Long Island Sound, and almost to New Jersey. So any strandings or deaths or injuries or concerns of marine animals, they have a hotline that you can call, and then they are responsible for recording whether or not it's its state, whether it's dead, whether it needs help. Harp seals are very interesting. That unlike the harbor and the gray that we've talked about, which are mostly spend most of the time in coastal waters and outcrops, this is a seal, what would be classified as a seal ice. I mean, ice seal. Get that right, Kim. An ice seal spends almost all of its time on ice, land-based ice. In other words, not floating ice flows, but ice pack that is land-based. So it spends most of its time way north of here, and only rarely does it make its way this far south. They like to be more out in the ocean when they're feeding. And I'm just going to read to you a little bit about its distribution because it's very interesting. It's in the northern hemisphere in the west North Atlantic, primarily the Gulf of St. Lawrence. But juveniles will range to US waters all the way to New Jersey in January through May, when the population is at its southernmost limit. But its southernmost limit is usually around the Maine, Gulf of Maine. So this is, if it's seen in these waters, it's way out of range. And one of the problems that befalls these little guys is that because they are pack ice seal, they're not familiar with sand and rocks, and they're sort of the rocky coastal shores that we have in New England. They get their water and their fluids from eating ice on the ice pack. But when you come down and you land on the sandy beach, there's no ice, but it's light, and so you eat the sand. And often what happens is that these will fill up their stomach with sand and small rocks. And obviously that's not good for them. And so the Mystic Aquarium will often come and try to rescue a stranded baby harp seal. And sometimes they're successful, other times they're not, but they've had a pretty good success rate. We had one on Block Island, probably in the early 2000s, that was on Ballard's Beach and got picked up by Mystic. And they actually did an operation on it to remove the rocks from its belly. And then it rehabbed at Mystic Aquarium for a couple of months. And then their practice is to release the animal in the general area that it was found. In this case, a trip to Block Island from Mystic seemed to be too much. So it was actually released in Connecticut. But that happened to be the year, this little sideline, that I was taking a group of students to Mystic Aquarium during winter February vacation. And so we got to visit, quote, our seal that was being rehabbed. And of course, Mystic staff was as excited about that as we were. All right, so I digress a little bit there, but nevertheless. So harp sails are beautiful. You also may be familiar with harp sails because this is one of the seals that the pups are pure white when they're born. They do not start out with these black blotches. Seals will molt their coats, and it will take a while for them to get their full adult, I was going to say plumage, but their full adult pelt. And so these are the ones that are often killed for furs or had been in the fur trade. And there's been a lot of information, a lot of published information about the taking of the baby seals in the North Atlantic, up in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and beyond. This animal adult is about 5.5 to 6 feet, 6.5 feet. So roughly the same size as a harbor seal. So that's our harp seal. Hooded seal. Now this is really an unusual bird to our waters, although I have seen a hooded seal on Block Island, a male. The male is on the left in this image. These are obviously not my pictures. They're images from the internet. They have the males. The hooded seal has a little like sack on its forehead and its upper nose. that can be deflated and have, just sort of rest there as, a wad of skin. But when it gets aggravated, it can pump that sac up with air and kind of rattle its head and be threatening and aggressive. It also has a very unique adaptation in that the red balloon, it can blow out that red balloon, and it's the membrane lining of the left nostril, right? Only one of the nostrils. You can basically get the air between the membrane and the inner part of the nostril, fill it and blow it out like a balloon. And again, that is a threatening, aggressive behavior. The ones of these that I'd ever seen was pulled up. It was not in good health. It was pulled up on a floating dock in the old harbor, and its balloon was sort of it was blown out, but with no air in it. So it was like a collapsed balloon. And that was the days that I was using a film camera. So quite a long time ago, and I have no idea where that photo is. So I had to resort to the internet for these. This is again a rare. This is a true. This animal, this species, spends most of its time more solitary than the others. The other three tend to spend times in colonies or big groups, or at least small groups, 10 to 12. Hooded seals tend to be solitary, with the exception of the pupping breeding season, where there might be a triad of the adult male, female, and the pup. They have, of all marine mammals, they have the richest milk. They, excuse me for a second. It is coffee with Kim after all. They are 4 days of nursing before the pup is weaned. The milk, the richness of the milk is unbelievably high, highest of all marine animals. So they spend most of the time on floating pack ice and the way out in the ocean. And again, I'll read just because it's interesting. The North Atlantic only, it's only in the North Atlantic, primarily the Gulf of St. Lawrence. In May, it may stray into US waters. Sometimes they've been found as far south as Florida. And then they migrate north. That's in December and March. They're sort of the wandering around, and sometimes they'll, as it says, stray this far south. But then they start migrating back north for pupping and breeding areas, which is, and their molting time. So that's the time when they're most vulnerable. So they want to be together and way off of Greenland. So these go way up off of Greenland. And then after they've pupped, bred, and molted, and they're ready for another life cycle, in the summers, they will then disperse even north and east of, east meaning towards Europe, north and east of Greenland. So these are way northern, this is a way northern species. And I'm sure there'll be a day that we see another on Block Island, but I'm not counting on it happening anytime soon. That's the hooded seal. So those are the 4 species that were most likely that we would see. And again, the gray seal and the harbor seal are the most likely. Gray seals especially have been increasing in numbers since 2017. And that was the first year that we really had a really big colony hanging out on Sandy Point, North Light area. And that colony stayed in not quite the huge numbers of the winter, but in big numbers through the summer that year. And then in the fall, they kind of dispersed, and they've been sort of intermittent. Last year, there weren't quite so many. This year, there seems to be, actually, last year, there were quite a few. Again, that picture was taken last year. This year, they are not being seen in that same number. I lead a nice group of volunteers where we survey 5 of the major potential haul out sites around the island every 2 weeks on the same schedule that Save the Bay has been doing it in their Narragansett Bay sites. Save the Bay started their seal monitoring program, which in essence, the Rhode Island program, in 1994. So they're just 27 years of monitoring, and we have just started as of, as I say, 2018, I think, with monitoring specifically around Block Island, and on the same protocol and days as Save the Bay, so that if they ever, right now they're keeping the data, I report that data to Save the Bay, and they keep it segregated from their list because they haven't been doing Block Island all this time. But at least it's a way of comparing the numbers here to the numbers in the Bay on the same day to make sure that we're not counting ones that may or may not have been in the Bay that day. We have a peak day. It's usually in early March. The early March is about the time that we think we're at peak migration, winter migration, where all the animals that are going to come this far south have arrived, and right before they start going back north for their pupping and their breeding in their northern summer environment. So seals have a number of poses, which are very interesting. We're not sure exactly what they all are about, but you typically see, especially harbor seals, in this, what's called the banana pose. And I think it's pretty aptly named. It's also, this image is a great way to see all four of its fins, its quote arm fins and its feet fins. They are pinnipeds. You probably have heard that term, refers to winged feet. But you can see they have some pretty good claws on them. Actually, the harp seal has even greater claws for, I guess, crawling around on the pack ice. And in the case of seals, their hind legs are stiff. They cannot rotate their hips. So their fins are basically swimming fins, and they use these flat flippers to propel themselves through the water. You'll see, if you think about sea lions, they can actually fold their legs up forward and use them as feet. Seals cannot do that because their hips are frozen in one position. And that's, an evolutionary design to, if we're going to be swimmers, let's be darn good swimmers. And they are. They may look cumbersome as they try wriggling up on a rock like this, but they're very maneuverable and graceful in the water. So they don't really know what the banana pose is about. Does not appear to be a threat pose. They often appear sleeping. This one is not. This one is looking at something, but the banana pose is a typical sort of haul out resting pose of the harbor seals, and other seals as well, but especially the harbor seals. Then there's the bottling pose. And this is most of the seals, as I mentioned, seals haul out to rest and get warm and conserve energy, but they can sleep in the water. And when they're sleeping in water, they're often in this, what's called the bottling position, where they're vertical in the water. They're very buoyant, like a buoy. And they have their mouths out of water, their noses for breathing, and they can sleep in this position or generally rest. So you don't often see this. Again, this is a great image for looking at their whiskers. Their whiskers are very stiff. And all of these seals eat schooling fish, squid, where they can get at octopus. Young will sometimes eat crabs and shrimp. So like any animal with whiskers, they're used both for sensing their environment. They're very sensitive, but also to act as extra um, tools. They're not purposely used for tools, but like rakes and netting to help gather fish and crabs and things as they go through the water. These are both harbor seals, as is this, which is the spy hopping pose. These animals, especially the harbor seals, gray seals as well, but harbor seals particularly, seem very curious. Many of you have probably had the experience of walking along the beach and suddenly you're aware that somebody is looking at you. And just offshore, there will be a spy hopping harbor seal looking at you to see what you're up about. And they're very curious. They'll sort of walk with you along the beach for a while. They're not threatened. You're not threatening them. But they're watching you as much as you are watching them. So this was that's it for species. I'd love to take as many questions as you can think of. I'm sure I missed things that I meant to speak about. I want to say a few things about resources that are available. First of all, if you're in our region, Mystic Aquarium is the place to call if you find a stranded or injured or dead marine animal. They have a website you can get to by, through Mystic Aquarium. And I should have put the phone number up here, but I did not. But you can easily get it at their website. And they will either, what they usually do is you usually leave a phone message and they will get back to you. Now that they've worked out their protocol procedure, they actually get back to us this year. Last winter, things were all confused and I'm not sure there was anybody answering the phone, but this year they are. And they have they train volunteers throughout the area. So if you're interested in marine mammals, you can become trained as one of their volunteers. And then when they, especially on Block Island, it works this way often. If I were to report a marine animal in distress or dead, which I do often, they will then contact one of the local Block Island volunteers. I'm not trained to be one of those, although I suppose I could be if I took that would be a good chore for the winter. Anyway, they would call a volunteer who would then come document the animal. If it was dead, document the animal, measure it and mark it so that they know if they get another call on it, whether that it's already been reported. If it's an animal that appears to be in distress in some way, especially baby seals, they'll ask them to monitor their condition for 24 hours because they do haul out to rest. Because they're young, they may haul out more than once. But if they don't move from the same position in 24 hours, then they will make a decision about whether or not they're going to try to rescue the animal or not. As you can imagine, rescuing a Block Island animal is a bigger chore for them than rescuing a stranded animal on the shore of Connecticut. And it's right there. There's a lot of complications when coming to Block Island, but members of the Nature Conservancy team have assisted with this in the past and gotten a live animal into a dog crate or animal crate and gotten it shipped off island. And so we at the Nature Conservancy do help when we can, and usually coordinate with Mystics volunteer coordinators. Another great guide to look is the Guide to Marine Mammals and Turtles of the U.S. I use that quite a bit. I was reading from that today. It's very concise and helps a lot. Save the Bay, going to their website, you can find out about their seal monitoring program in Narragansett Bay. And of course, they have a lot of information about the 27-year effort to monitor the sort of the recovery of seals in Narragansett Bay. And finally, the Rhode Island Natural History Survey website has Dr. Kenny, whose photo I showed earlier, a retired marine mammal professor, has written some wonderful pieces about each of the species, many of the marine animals, not just the seals. And there's a lot of information in each one of those. It's entertaining reading because he wrote them for a blog spot on the website. They're not too long, but they're packed with interesting information. So if you're interested in learning out more, I suggest any of those. And with that, I will take questions and I will attempt.
Okay, Kim, by accident, oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, thank you. Thank you once again for another great presentation. Oh, what happened? Something happened here. Can you hear me, Kim?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, so again, thank you. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Always informative. The question I had is, on the Cape, there's a lot of issues with great white sharks being attracted to the beaches of the Cape because of the seal population there. Are we seeing any increased activity around the island?
Well, it's hard to tell if we're seeing increased activity or if we're just seeing the activity that's always been there but hasn't been tracked. Scientists at Woods Hole have been studying great white sharks for quite a while, and their breeding area and summer area has been known for a long time to be offshore of Block Island. So now that it's become popular and they're actually putting tags, radio tags that can, respond more immediately, and the public is more available. The tracking information is more instantly available to the public. We generally think we're seeing more activity, but it's probably the same activity that has been there. It's just that we're becoming aware of it in a greater bit. We have not had any, to my knowledge, we have not had any, quote, shark attacks. And I might have I don't know, maybe a biased perspective on this, but we have to learn how to live with these wild critters. And they're not coming into our beaches in our areas. We're going into their waters. And so we have to learn to live with them, observe them, understand them as best we can. So I'm not sure. And there may be somebody on this call who knows more about this subject than I do. I'm sure there is. I'm looking at his image, but it's cool that they're coming here. I like that we get to see the haul outs all summer. I find it interesting, but it hasn't been established. We had one summer where they were really here in numbers, and since then we really haven't. So we'll leave the great white shark attacks to Massachusetts.
Oh, great.
I hope that helps.
Kim, there were a couple of comments or questions in the chat. If you want me to, I can just let you know what they are. First of all, Isabel shared, thank you, Isabel, shared the hotline number for the Marine Mammal Stranding Program. So that's in there. One person asked about, in the picture that you showed of the banana pose, is the navel visible? Is there?
Yeah, that is the navel. Should I try to, would you let me to go back to that?
Sure. Yeah. And the other question while you're doing that is, do they commingle peacefully? I was kind of curious about that too. The different, between harbor and gray, I would assume. Yeah.
Gray and harbor seals, where their ranges overexist, they do commingle, and they're likely to be hauled out together in the same area. For instance, this particular picture is in off of the Paris Center, and there were gray seals and harbor seals. In the haul out at the Sandy Point, that really big one that year, there were harbor seals in there, but that was predominantly gray seals. And what's interesting is that it kind of demonstrates that they say for gray seals that they actually prefer rough water and where there's a riptide, and which of course Sandy Point is the only place on Block Island like that, and that's where the biggest concentration of gray seals are. But yes, they do commingle quite well together. And yes, that is the navel, but I think I had another photo that's
you did the closer one where we saw the claws.
Yeah,
sit back, but
yeah.
let me see if anyone else.
Oops, wrong way. Can't see me. Oh, there we go. This one.
There, yeah.
Yeah, there's the navel right there. And I can't really tell on this because I'm not that good, but if this is a younger animal, but if it was a female, which it might be, its teats would be right here, right? And then if it's a male, its penile opening would be right here. So it would have one or the other. So I guess I'm thinking that this probably is a female, but that's probably a little too much biology. But anyway, yes, the navel. I think we saw that with the harp seal as well, that freshly pupped.
Yeah.
Right here. This
the hooded, yeah.
It's the hooded, sorry. Yeah, hooded, harped, and harbor. Please give me a break here. Well, I guess I could be using the scientific names. That would be even worse. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Another question just popped up. How long is the gestation period?
From all of these, it's plus or minus a year. Some of them are 11 months, 12 months, 10 months. And the shortest period between pupping and weaning is, as I said, the hooded, which is 4 days. The harbor is about a month. The gray is about 2 weeks. And let me try the harp. The harp seal is weaned 12 days. So they're all a little different. And it all has to do with the richness of their milk. So interestingly, it's the harp seal and the hooded, the more northern species, the ones we're least likely to see, who are in the more extreme, who find the Gulf of St. Lawrence as their warm, balmy winter hideout. Those are the ones very, very short weaning periods and very, very rich milk. They gain a lot of weight in those 4 days or 12 days.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions? You can just take yourself off mute or comment. That's totally fine.
One, Kim, you mentioned that we know they're eating fish and crabs and shrimp. How much do we know? I mean, these things must eat a ton. And how much do we know about what they're foraging on, for example, around Block Island?
Well, I'm just switching sites here. I'm going, but it says for the harbor seal, and this reference I'm looking at was done by Malia Schwartz and under the work of Bob Kenny. So these are Rhode Island based marine mammal people. It says a variety of schooling fish, ground fish, squid, and octopus. So how much, I don't know, but I think it's interesting. And John, I'd love to a schooling fish. I think that would be like a mackerel, smaller fish.
The Atlantic herring, menhaden, yeah.
Relative, they're not taking striped bass, bluefish, they're taking the smaller fish, and they are incidentally caught as bycatch by fishermen. And in all the stuff I talked about, I read, and not this resource but others, they always said that fishermen had a perceived belief that they were competing with them. Now that implied to me that it was the jury was out and whether or not they were actual competitors, or if just their presence led fishermen to believe that those darn seals are eating my fish. So I don't really know enough about that. others. Beyond all the science, they're beautiful. They're so much fun to go out on Block Island or wherever you are and look for them hauled out, and it's a delight. We out here will say, you know, oh, I saw the seals, or the seals are back at the Parish Center. Another great place that actually the very first photo I showed of the gray seal diving off the dock, that was in Cormorant Cove. So they have favorite spots. They love the rocks off of the Parish Center. They love the floating docks in Cormorant Cove, as well as the Cormorant Point, which at low tide is exposed, and the Sandy Point. And then on the west side, they're typically on rocks, not on big boulders out in the water, but occasionally you see one hauled up on the rocky shoreline. But it's a delight. And you know, 1972 is when the Marine Mammal Protection Act went into existence, and their numbers were greatly decreased. They consider the harbor seal numbers to be stable now in Narragansett Bay at around 800. So they have come back since then because of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. But I went to school out here, and I graduated in 1975, so that was right after that. And we used to go, we had a science teacher one year who liked to take us outside, and we would walk from the school cross lots to the Parish Center to look at seals. So that was in the mid 70s. And so they have been around Block Island, you know, probably a lot longer than anybody who's been out here. This is, again, this is their habitat that we're sharing with them. I'll always be thankful to that teacher who thought they could take their kids cross lots during a school day to go see the seals at the Parish Center, which wasn't even the Parish Center then yet.
Yeah, actually, George just had a quick question. He thought I said Parish Center. It's the St. Andrew's Parish Center on Spring Street. Just totally fine.
That's my Block Island accent.
No. Well, you're a true Islander, Kim. There was one other question here. Can you talk a little more about how they follow you along the beach as you're walking? I always feel like they're being playful, and kind of goes along with we're sharing their environment.
Right. I think they're just curious, and they may be playful. I think they're curious. They want to see what we are and where we're going, and they probably want to make sure we're not about to dive in the water and compete with them for their piece of Menhaden. But marine mammals are very intelligent creatures, and most creatures are more intelligent than we give them credit for, and they are, they're curious. They want to know what they're looking at in the same way that we're curious. So it could be playfulness. Curiosity and playfulness, I think, go together pretty darn well.
Okay, who was the teacher in 1970?
It was Bob Potenza.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think this particular, I've watched every single one of these videos since you started them, of course, and I think this particular one should be required for the school. It's so interesting and just so cool. I'm going to immediately get my 3 grandchildren watching it today. So thank you. It's really.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. The recording won't be ready today. We have to go through a couple steps, but I'll let you know when it's been posted up there. But thank you. And speaking of which, I mean, these all are on our website, natureblockisland.org. And the next one, Kim, is coming up shortly. Is
on February 22nd. It's Monday, and that'll be one of our walking ones, and we'll be going around the periphery of John E.'s tug hole. And if you don't know what a tug hole is, you'll have to tune in to find out.
I'll have to.
Oh, come on. Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate the response.
You're going to be up to find my house next then.
Yep.
I'm just putting in the chat the site if anyone hasn't been there. It's natureblockisland.org, and that's, you can get to the Zoom link. You can see all the recordings. We even put in on the winter duck presentation the slides of the winter ducks that you can refer to. There's also Kim's virtual socially distanced bird walk information there, and all kinds of stuff. So
right, and if you don't know what a social distance bird walk is, check out that. It's we go on a bird walk, and I take sightings from everybody, no matter where they are, and then share it with everybody who participated, and it's a lot of fun. I have people who tell me what they see in Norway and Switzerland and Florida and England and Scotland and New York and Oregon, Washington State, and of course many on Block Island and Massachusetts. And I'd love to have reports from wherever you are. It's fun. And soon we're going to be able to see that the southern people are seeing songbirds that we will see a couple of weeks later. We'll be able to track the spring migration as it moves northward. That will be fun as well. And those migrations happen around the world, so it doesn't matter if you're on this continent or not. You're going to be, you're most likely to be seeing some kind of migration and change of bird populations. Always fun.
great. And Kim, speaking of birds, someone just put in the chat about the great bird count starting Friday.
Oh, the Great Backyard Bird Count. Yes, that is an international effort over the long 3-day weekend. That's orchestrated by the Cornell Bird Lab and the National Audubon Society. And over that 3-day weekend, you can log on through eBird, and their sites are all of it pretty easy to use and well noted, and put in your sites for each day or each walk that you take, and it builds this. They build a map, a worldwide map of birds that are being seen in real time at that time, and it's fascinating and it's fun to be part of. Again, it's kind of goes to the base idea of citizen science, where we each can contribute our small part, and our small part is just really important to the big picture. You just think, that puzzle, that jigsaw puzzle is not done until you get the last piece in there. So anybody can participate with that. It's free. Just go out, just look up the Great Backyard Bird Count through the Cornell Lab and National Audubon Society. And yes, we'll be doing that on Block Island as well. Anybody else? I always hate to see you guys go. This is my big outing of the week in these COVID
the virtual
times.
outing. I know.
But if that's it, Charlotte, I guess
that's it. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll see you at Johnny's Tug Hole in a week and a bit.
Okay, great.
All righty.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.